It's 1940. You're standing in the dark, packed shoulder to shoulder with hundreds of strangers, and above you, London is being torn apart. The Blitz has started. Bombs are falling every night, sometimes for hours, and the only place that feels even remotely safe is 50 feet underground, in a tube station that was never built to hold this many people. Families are sleeping on the tracks. Babies are crying. Somebody's playing cards by candlelight because there's nothing else to do. And crawling through the warm, stale air around all of you, feeding on whoever's closest, are mosquitoes. Nobody down there is thinking about the mosquitoes. You've got bigger problems. But those mosquitoes are about to do something that no one in that tunnel, no one in London, no one on Earth is going to notice for almost 60 years. They're going to become a new species. Not a new breed, not a weird local variant. An actual, genetically distinct branch of life that didn't exist before humans built a tunnel system and then, completely by accident, sealed a population of insects inside it. And here's the thing that makes this so unsettling. It's still down there. Right now. Today. Every single time you've stepped onto the London Underground, you've been sharing that space with an animal that only exists in that exact stretch of tunnel and nowhere else on the planet. So let's talk about how humans, without meaning to, without even knowing it was happening, invented a completely new form of life underneath one of the biggest cities on Earth. Here's where most people get the story wrong. They assume some mosquitoes just wandered into the tube one day, got a bit weird from living underground, and that's basically it. Cute trivia, nothing serious. But that is not what the science says. That is not adaptation, that is speciation, which is a completely different, much bigger deal. To understand why, you need to know what the mosquito was doing before it ever went underground. The species is called Culex pipiens, and up on the surface, it lives a pretty standard mosquito life. It bites birds mostly. It needs a blood meal before it can lay eggs, every single time, no exceptions. And when winter hits and the temperature drops, it goes dormant. It basically shuts down for months, waiting for spring the exact same way it's done for millions of years. Now take that mosquito and drop it into a 250-mile network of tunnels that never sees sunlight, never drops below a certain temperature no matter what season it is on the surface, and is absolutely packed with a food source that never migrates south for the winter. You. Let that sink in for a second. Constant warmth, constant food, zero birds. The entire survival strategy that species had been running for millions of years was suddenly useless, and a completely different one had just become available, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. So the underground population started doing something the surface population never had to. It stopped waiting for blood before laying eggs. Some individuals could produce a first batch of eggs using nothing but the energy they were born with, a trait scientists call autogeny, and topside Culex pipiens basically never does this. It stopped going dormant because down there was never a winter to prepare for. And it stopped biting birds because there weren't any, and started biting mammals instead, rats, and you. 3 fundamental changes to how this animal survives and reproduces, all happening in the dark, all happening without a single scientist watching, for decades. But here's the part that turns this from a weird footnote into something genuinely wild. In 1999, 2 researchers named Catherine Barn and Richard Nichols decided to actually test what everyone had assumed was just a funny bit of city folklore. They collected mosquitoes from deep inside the underground and compared their genetics to mosquitoes living on the surface, just a few hundred feet above them. And what they found was that the underground population had diverged so far genetically that when researchers tried to breed the 2 groups together in a lab, it barely worked. The offspring struggled. In some pairings, it failed completely. Think about what that actually means. Reproductive isolation. That is the textbook definition scientists use to decide whether something counts as a separate species. Not a color difference. Not a size difference. Whether 2 populations can still successfully make more of themselves together. And after roughly 60 years underground, a difference of maybe a few dozen generations for you and me, this mosquito had drifted far enough that the answer was basically no. 60 years. To put that in perspective, the Finches Darwin studied on the Galapagos, the ones that basically launched our entire understanding of evolution, took thousands of years to develop the differences we still talk about today. This mosquito did something comparable in less time than most people's grandparents have been alive. And it gets stranger. Because the tube isn't one big open cave system. It's dozens of separate lines, built at different points over more than a century. And a lot of those tunnels don't actually connect to each other underground, which means the mosquito populations sealed inside the Victoria line and the ones sealed inside the Bakerloo line haven't necessarily been mixing with each other this entire time either. So it's not really accurate to say there's one London underground mosquito. There may be several slightly different populations, quietly drifting apart from each other, line by line, station by station, each one adapting to its own tiny pocket of the network, completely unaware that a few hundred feet away through solid Earth, a cousin population is doing the exact same thing. Now here's the crucial piece you need to sit with. Nobody designed this. No scientist bred these mosquitoes on purpose. No engineer looked at the plans for the underground in 1863 and thought, this is going to accidentally manufacture a new species in about a century. A government didn't fund this. It happened because humans dug holes in the ground for trains, and then, decades later, humans hid inside those holes from bombs. And an insect that had been quietly along for the ride the entire time simply did what evolution always does when you change an animal's world completely. It adapted to what was actually in front of it, generation after generation, until adapting stopped being enough of a word for what was happening. And before you write this off as some one-off London weirdness, it isn't. Similar populations have turned up in subway systems and basements in other cities around the world, wherever humans have built the same kind of sealed, warm, blood-rich, underground environment. Every time we build a city, we're not just building homes for ourselves. We're building entirely new, alien habitats, and something, somewhere, is moving in and rewriting itself to survive there, usually faster than we'd ever expect. We tend to think of evolution as this impossibly slow process, something that only shows results across millions of years, fossils and continents drifting and all of that. But the London underground mosquito is proof that if the pressure is intense enough, and the isolation is complete enough, evolution doesn't need millions of years. It barely needs a human lifetime. So the next time you're standing on a platform somewhere beneath London, waiting for your train, glance around. You're not just underground. You're standing inside one of the fastest, strangest, most accidental experiments in evolution humans have ever run. And you didn't even need a lab coat to run it. You just needed a war, a tunnel, and about 60 years of nobody paying attention. And somewhere in that tunnel, something is still down there right now, quietly becoming a little less like its ancestors, and a little more like something new.